This is the state of the world. Catalytic conversations with leaders who are reinventing the web and building trusted technologies for the future of humanity. Brought to you by EXO, the Internet of Impact.
So it's a great pleasure to have my good friend Will Ruddick on the catalytic conversation we're having today. And Will, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, John, good to be here. I'm Will Ruddick. I'm the founder of Grassroots Economics. I've been here in Kenya for about 12 years and working on community currencies pretty much that whole time.
Fantastic. So we kind of jump right into it with the first important question, which is, what is got your attention right now about the state of the world? And the reason we asked this question about like one specific thing that really, when you got up out of bed this morning or you think about it, is, every day we are having conversations, you and I speak a lot, but if we stop to pause and we just really think, okay, what is it that really has got our attention? That sometimes gives us indications of tipping points and things that are about to become evident, but may not be generally realized by everyone.
Yeah. Well, so, there's been this dream for a long time of people being able to create self-sovereign currencies. And I mean, this, predates Bitcoin and all these, blockchain inventions. And today we see that happening more and more and more, where companies and businesses and all kinds of, humanitarian organizations, small states and cities are starting to create their own value systems and their own currencies behind them. And it's super exciting what's happening right now. We're really entering into a sort of a pluralistic monetary system. And there's a lot going on, behind the scenes, and it's, it's happening from all different angles right now. That's happening at the same time as a huge amount of environmental degradation, and we'll get more into it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've been working on this, as you said, for a number of years, and it does seem that all of a sudden it's kind of it's the development of the moment. There's a definite increase in community currencies mentioned in different ways, and of course different interpretations of what people call community currencies or local currencies or exchange mutual exchange systems and so on. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more about your understanding or your approach to this? And I think you've got a particularly, valid perspective on this, having worked on it for so long and also having a large user base.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to take it, but what we do in Kenya and what I've been trying to do for, about 12 years now is work with small communities, show them what's possible. I mean, even with paper vouchers and moving into blockchain and mobile phone systems, that they can create their own credit source, right? They can actually fill this gap of missing Kenyan shillings, which is huge and chronic. I mean, they're constantly lacking this. And, 100, 150 years ago, they had reciprocal systems that they would use with the chief, with shells and tally sticks. They had all kinds of different ways to create reciprocity. And with the introduction of money, they lost a lot of that, because all of a sudden, the only way they could exchange with each other was through a foreign input medium of exchange. So the shilling came in, and the British would impose a hut tax on everyone, and all of a sudden everyone had to have these or they'd go to jail. And so it was a tool for imperialism. And so the idea for a community to say, well, can we create our own credit system again, like our ancestors did? I think it's super powerful and it's super needed. And, specifically also to do things like regenerative agriculture, you need a lot of labor. Where are you going to get the money to pay for that labor? Well, if you can pay for it in the future production of that land, right? So if you can create a credit against your future production, well, then there's your credit source right there. And so to me, the idea of doing regenerative agriculture, which is a lot of what we're focused on these days, is this is the funding source for it. And at least there may be inputs from aid organizations and investors and carbon credits to sort of bootstrap these things, but there's never going to be enough of that, and it doesn't even make sense for it to really work at that scale. And so you need some sort of local generating system to create credit. So I mean, that's where I really got into this stuff. But I mean, the idea that we're decentralizing credit issuance as a society, as that's becoming normal, like go back to like mileage plus miles, right? Can an airline create vouchers against its own airline tickets, and can those vouchers be used in secondary markets? And that's been happening for ages and ages and ages, and businesses and municipalities are just starting to get sort of the chutzpah to actually do it. And I mean, there's points throughout history where that's happened, and generally they're squashed. And what's been exciting about blockchain is that we can create more sensor-proof systems, that that there are these little floating around cryptos that people are starting to see as currency. I mean, I don't like a lot of the ways that they've been created because they don't have clear backing. But at the same time, it's a really exciting time because people are getting used to the concept of a pluralistic monetary system. And even just, a typical Kenyan nowadays has something like 3 or 4 types of money at hand almost all the time. They've got e-money, like they've got bonga points, which are sort of like voucher systems against airtime. They've got airtime itself. They've got banking credit. They've got cash, right? All of them have different functions, and not all of them are really, 100% fungible, or, like there's a lot of different instruments. And so like for someone to have a voucher that's good for a dozen goods and services in a village, it's not that big of a deal anymore. And so, and even to have 5 of those vouchers, and some of them are exchangeable with each other, like that system is getting normal to people. And I think, at some point, your Costco card is going to have Costco money on it. I mean, if it doesn't already, and you're going to be able to use that within a whole ecosystem around it. And that will be actually a whole alternative system to the national US dollar. It'll be complementary to it. And nation states can still be used as networking tokens and liquid, in terms of how to connect different currencies together. And so I think that's what DeFi and all the liquidity pools and stuff have brought also to the system is so huge. And so to me, blockchain has birthed a lot of this decentralized ecosystem where we can actually build trusted systems. And we can actually have signed claims against the validity of these systems, and be able to look at what is the supply, who has the supply, what's the distribution of the supply look like, how much redemption has there been. Like, can we actually know that for any currency in the world right now? Is quite rare, unless you're talking about a token on a blockchain. So I think that's really exciting, and if we can pull nation states into these things, and that can be done in some good ways and bad ways. I think we're seeing some of that right now. Like having transparent taxation systems where exactly where your tax dollar goes, where there's transparent voting systems on top of all that. Like all of that's possible. I know people have been talking about this stuff for a long time, and I think in Kenya here we've been making these systems work on feature phones so that people can be trading their tokens on a feature phone and not have to deal with their private key for now. Although they can now, because it's on blockchain, they can move from that sort of custodial feature phone system onto a non-custodial one, or and so that's really exciting too. That no one has to own that infrastructure necessarily.
And so amongst all of these technology developments, you've been leading in the design and also the testing of these technologies. What are you working on that you think has got the most potential? It may be something experimental, or maybe something that you're busy scaling up, that you think has got most potential to change the state of the world using these new paradigms?
Honestly, I think that what we're doing right now is just integrating a lot of existing technology and making it easy to use and available. And so I'm really, really excited about the fact that a community group can create their own token, that they can actually become automatically visible on a marketplace, even with other tokens, right? That there can be trading between those two. That's essentially old technology at this point. It's just making it easy for people to use. There's the sense of the humanitarian sector getting involved. I'm really excited about that because the Red Cross, for instance, has 1.6 million volunteers across the planet, and if they can see this as an aid modality and even a humanitarian infrastructure, that they can be part of, I think that's immensely powerful as well. And a lot of what we're doing is just taking those things like gas fees and getting rid of stuff like that, right? So like we can't operate on the Ethereum ecosystem because it's way too expensive, right? So, if, I really love a lot of these peer-to-peer systems, like Holochain and whatnot, but the problem is we don't have the ability to run those nodes, and especially people in villages don't. So we still need some level of centralization to support these and humanitarian infrastructure and whatnot. And so I'm excited about blockchains like in Cosmos and like IXO that are connected automatically with each other. And so you can have the ability for people to have really application specific chains that can connect to each other again. So getting away from the centralization. But I mean, mostly I'm happy about integrating all this stuff together in a way that a woman on the side of the road here can sell one tomato worth 5 shillings, right? Like that's like 5 cents on the dollar. So if I can do a transaction on a blockchain for 5 cents on the dollar, right? That's what I'm really excited about. And there's a whole bunch of really cool projects that have done so, like Althea Network, amazing mesh network stuff. The Regen Network in terms of doing storing carbon credit information. IXO in terms of like impact claims, like being able to show humanitarian sector like actually what's behind even a currency itself, or the positive actions that youth are doing and things like that. So there's just a lot out there that just needs to be integrated and packaged in a way people can digest it, and that goes for the humanitarian sector as well. I mean, there's been a giant push in the last 10 years towards VSLAs, which are like village savings and loan associations, and we might say CHAMA, like these are like group savings and loan groups. And there's a technology behind that that's very simple. It's done on little ledger books, and there's training for it. And that package has permeated all over Africa now, right? And that's now 10 years old. And now they're saying, well, look, these village and savings groups don't actually have enough money to save, right? That's one of the biggest problems of them. They're great technology, and they're done with little ledgers, right? So all that says is that people need ledgers, right? And then at the same time, they need some type of medium of exchange. And so I think, packaging a lot of this stuff for the humanitarian sector is a huge door opener. And it kind of puts everyone on the same bus in terms of, the impacts are now transparent for the humanitarian sector and governments. And everyone's kind of together in this idea of like, okay, we need to actually have data that we can trust. We need to have endorsements and signatures on that we can trust. So there's a lot of just aha moments all coming together, and yeah.
And an opportunity here for this sector to really lead the world in terms of creating new economy and new systems and usable blockchains. So what's being experimented with here and what's being proven out really has got huge implications for the whole world in terms of what's possible and how these can be applied in different settings. So it is really groundbreaking work. So if we sum this up into a question or an idea or something that we can do that will have a kind of catalytic influence on the way that people kind of leave this conversation, what would you say that would be in the last couple of minutes?
I'm constantly, even in the town I live with here in Kilifi, I'm constantly working to express to people their ability to self-organize and mobilize together and not have to wait on national currency to do so. And we have this discussion around like basic income, for instance, and things like that. And to me, these are perfectly designable constructs that we can actually deal with at this very moment. So, if you're in a church group or you're in a community, there's so many examples right now around the world. I mean, feel free to ping me or Sean. There's, even in Hong Kong, churches are creating their own currencies, right? Like this is what's happening right now. And for people to just be aware of it, and to even if you start with pieces of paper, or a physical ledger book like they do in Japan, right? Just to record those transactions. I think that's a beautiful thing to even just think through what that sort of constitution looks like, what's that agreement look like. I mean, there's a lot of powerful stuff going on right now, like with like community land trusts, for instance, or carbon credit programs where like communities do come together into a state that's sort of self-organizing and creating, voting systems and all this stuff. If you can define that and look at a group you're in, that could be sharing with each other more than they are right now.
So unfortunately, our time is up. That was a really great note to end off on, and a great sort of call to action. That's something that we can all actually start experimenting with and engaging with. Thanks so much, Will. This was amazing, and I look forward to everything we're going to do together and what the future holds.